almost the entire world right now is caught up in a swirling vortex of emotional assessment. And nobody, virtually nobody, is saying, wait a minute, should we attempt to seek the safe harbor of rational thought? I feel like this channel might be the lone voice in the wilderness on this. There are so many out there right now who believe in their heart of hearts that they are thinking, when truly they are just assessing emotion, reacting to it, and then moving on to the next one. In today's video, I'm going to show you something that the entire world, both right and left, missed. I'm sure a lot of you saw the announcement this morning from the president. Everybody's well aware of what's going on at the banks. How many of you, when you were kids, little kids, and you wanted something from the store, and your parents couldn't afford it, or even if they could, it probably wasn't a good financial decision at the time, how many of you got the response of, well, one day we'll go pick some money off the magic money tree, and then we'll go do these things? I'm sure some version of this is in most of my audience's history. When we were little kids, we wanted something, and we didn't understand the concept of economics or, what good budgeting was. Somebody's parents or grandparents somewhere said something like this. That's exactly what happened this morning. And not one person, no matter how far to the right you are, Trump supporters, or how far to the left you are, whoever you are, whatever spectrum, nobody is seeing this. Do you know who should be viscerally angry right now? The insured depositors around the world in all banks. Because guess what? The President of the United States just decided to magically change the rules. We're going to go pick some magic money off the magic money tree because of systemic risks. Read too big to fail. We are going to make whole all of these depositors who knowingly put money in this bank knowing that it wasn't JP Morgan, that it wasn't US Bank, that it was a much smaller bank and the risks were higher. And that's just the chance you take. Joe Biden literally sat there and said, this is how capitalism works. The US government is now going to step in, intervene, and change the rules after the game and say, okay, you group of people over here, you're insured, you're okay. But also you other group of people over here that are uninsured, okay, yeah, we're going to insure you too because we feel sorry for you. But this third group of people over here, all of these other people, no, sorry, you're screwed. That's just how capitalism works. That's exactly what he said. It's mind-numbing. If you would like to not be a mind-numbed zombie, join us over at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel, where it's only $1 US per month. Period. No changing the rules mid-game. No changing the rules downstream. It's even less if you sign up for an entire year, fully refundable first 90 days, no questions asked. There's a quote out there from someone in our history that everybody is aware of. I'm not allowed to mention the man's name here on this channel, Germany, 1940s, that said, if you don't like a rule, just follow it and then get to be on top and then change the rules. Well, that's exactly what happened. Biden says Americans should feel confident in banking system after federal response to SVB collapse. The FDIC is backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. Who's responsible for the U.S. government? People. President Biden says the bank failures will not cost taxpayers money. Not directly, but indirectly it will. They had to create a brand new way of doing things. See, this isn't just normal FDIC insurance. They had to create a brand new workaround for this, meaning they changed the rules after the fact. And there's a really great piece. CBS accidentally did some reporting today, very early this morning, for about 1 minute, right at the very end. They had a guest on that I don't think that they realized was going to tell the truth, and told the truth. Joe Biden said, no losses will be borne by the taxpayers, Biden emphasized. Instead, the money will come from the fees that banks pay into the deposit insurance fund. Where do you think the banks get that money? That's right, from the depositors. And if you're a depositor in an American bank, guess what you are? You are a taxpayer. That's right. And if you decided to be responsible and put your money in a normal bank like JP Morgan or I know Wells Fargo's having some issues right now, but US Bank, Ameribank, the bigger banks, the quote unquote safer banks, if you decided to do that because you didn't want to expose yourself to the risk of putting your money in a small bank like SVB, guess what? You're screwed. Now, this is, believe it or not, this is it. This is a guy they had on from out in California. Startup CEO says he cannot pay his employees amid Silicon Valley Bank collapse. That's actually a misnomer of a title. The guy literally says we couldn't pay them on Friday, but because of what Biden did, we can pay them today. So basically, these people that work for him, instead of getting paid for the weekend, they just had to wait till Monday morning to get their paychecks. Not really the end of the world. But wait till you listen to what this guy says, because it's completely opposite of what you're being told, and it's the absolute truth.
But that's not the reason why they failed this week. The reason why they failed this week was they had bought long-dated treasury bonds, and they classified those assets as held to maturity, which didn't force them to write down the assets on their balance sheet. And so it had a hidden risk that most people wouldn't have been able to see. And I think that they're a canary in the coal mine to the broader financial system here, because commercial real estate is really the challenge that's going to face most regional banks around the country. And that's what worries me. So we look at Silicon Valley Bank, and, tech as a whole is, a target politically. And I don't think that's necessarily fair. The issue we have right now is inflation driving interest rates up, banks holding long-term treasuries at very low interest rates, and the mark-to-market risk is very large.
You see, that's what you're not being told. This bank, this SVB, put money into 1% long-term 20-year bonds, basically some of the most safe investments that you can possibly think of. And this was all, and they did this all pre-COVID, all pre-shutdown, all pre, everything that happened in the last 3 years. They committed to this because for decades, actually, there had been zero interest rates. And so they got these low yield, long-term bonds, which is about as safe as you can get. And no reasonable person prior to 2018 or 2017 would have thought that would have been a bad choice or caused some type of collapse in the bank. No reasonable person would have said that. Remember yesterday we talked about fiduciary duty? Probably the safest thing you could ever recommend to anybody is, buy a 20-year, 1% government bond. And you're going to have to, be parted from your money for 10, 15, 20 years, but you'll get your money back. Well, in this particular case, everything that's happened in the last 3 years, primarily driven by government decisions to jack up interest rates, has caused them to have to liquidate those at a huge loss. So in this case, blaming the bank, so to speak, is only part of the game. You see, they had to create what they call a systemic risk exception. And this is a complete flip from what was going on yesterday when I made my video yesterday talking about today being a bad day. Federal banking regulators announced full deposit insurance coverage of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank deposits. New Federal Reserve Bank lending program. On the evening of Sunday, March 12, which is after the video I put up yesterday, the U.S. Department of the Treasury, Board of Governors, the Federal Reserve System, and the FDIC made 3 joint announcements. Basically, what they're saying here is that there was a systemic risk exception made. Let's see if I can find that. Yeah, right here. The Treasury Department authorized a systemic risk exception. When you hear this, just read too big to fail. Now, is SVB a big bank like JP Morgan? No. Maybe they should say too interconnected to fail. This is basically thievery. And once again, Axios actually has this. They're the ones who've come closest to actually coming out and saying people are only reacting emotionally right now. They're not thinking. Nobody is using their brain. And it's all the way at the bottom after they go through this whole idea about bailouts. People are saying, well, wait a minute, everything has already been FDIC insured. Yes, but in this particular case, they're not just letting people take their insurance. They're also authorizing things that are uninsured. I mean, imagine if you had paid your car insurance for 25 years and all of a sudden, and somebody hadn't, and they're going to now, say, okay, well, guess what? It's not a crime. Grandfathered back, it's not a crime. Oops, oopsie daisy. Yeah, it's too much of a risk out there to make everybody pay car insurance. So all of you who have paid car insurance, gosh, thanks for doing so. But it was, if you, the same thing with the people who paid their loans off. It's like, wait a minute, the government was going to bail out all these student loans. What about all the people that paid their loans off? Do I get my money back? All the people that were like 3 months or 6 months away from paying off decades of student loans, all of a sudden the government says, oh, we're just going to forgive your buddies who hasn't paid a dime. That's what this is. The Biden administration is pushing back hard on the idea that this is a bailout, no losses associated with resolution, blah, 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 blah. But they don't know where the money comes from. If a bailout doesn't cost anything, is it really a bailout? And what they're saying, the deposit insurance fund is bearing the risk. This is not funds from the taxpayer, but what they're not saying, most taxpayers are also bank depositors, and some portion of their bank deposits is used to fund the FDIC in what feels much like an involuntary tax being levied by a government agency. Thank you, Axios, for telling the truth. So in this particular case, we got CBS and Axios. I mean, classically, they're kind of more liberal oriented, but in this particular case, they got him. This is just too big of a risk to fail. That's all that's going on here. For the government to have to step in and 9 o'clock, first thing this morning, and he wasn't a minute late this morning. He was out there at 9 o'clock telling everybody, we're going to change the rules and we're going to take these banks into receivership. And even if you weren't insured, we're going to make sure you get paid anyway. Anybody who has actually paid insurance for anything should be livid right now. So for all of you out there who want to, say, well, you said we were going to collapse this morning. We didn't. Yeah, because last night they changed their tune. Last night, they decided, oh, we totally forgot. We have these acres and acres and acres of magic money trees that we have planted. And we're going to use those acres of money trees to take care of everybody who might feel like they were treated unfairly. Unless you were a big, rich investor and not you. I mean, think of the gall it takes to say you got three groups of people. You got depositors who are insured, depositors who are uninsured, and then you have all of these investors in the bank. Now, the investors in the bank are the ones that have made the bank even available for the depositors. Without the investors in the bank, there would have been no depositors in same said bank. But of course, what are they doing? They're making out every investor or anybody who's made any kind of money as some kind of evil, terrible, horrible person. And everybody who just had their money in the bank, just doing whatever. Life is about risk. Life is about risk. Earlier in that clip, there was he was talking about how his company didn't actually bank with SVB, but his payroll provider did. So they were the ones that had the problem. What did the payroll provider do? The payroll provider is now working with JP Morgan, Chase Bank. And because they're now working with Chase Bank, magically he made payroll. I mean, imagine that. Now, some people say, well, I don't want my money in a big bank. Okay, I get you. I'm with you. Put your money wherever you want to. There's associated advantages and risks with any and every decision you make in life. But when you go out there, it's just like changing the lottery numbers after the game. It literally is. It's like, well, not enough people are winning lottery winnings that we think so. So we're going to find out who picked what numbers, what were those common numbers picked, and we're going to go ahead and change the lottery numbers after the fact to make sure enough people get paid out. That's literally what this is. But is anybody seeing it? No. Do you know why? Nobody's thinking. Nobody is using their brain anymore. Everybody's like, oh, screw those bank guy, Biden, he's a great guy. He's going to go out there and fight for the little man and get our paid and get... Just emotions. It's just emotions. So I'll leave it there. But once again, to all of you who have joined us over the Florida Maquis Patreon channel already, you are probably ahead of this. So thank you very, very much. I very much appreciate you guys signing up over there. If you would like to get read in on how not to fall for this kind of crap when it comes out and how to see right through it, join us. It'll be the best $1 US per month that you spend fully, I guess you could say it this way, fully insured for up to 90 days. After that, no promises. For up to 90 days, full disclosure, you can get your, if you sign up for $1 a month, you can get your, what would be then $3 back. And if you sign up for an entire year where it's less than $1 a month, in that first 90 days, you can have that entire month sent back to you. But you have to do that within the first 90 days. Those are the rules. Not going to change the rules after. Not going to change the rules down the road, just like Joe Biden just did. Because it sounds good, and it's politically convenient and expedient. So, I'll leave it there. Keep your head on a swivel, guys. God bless. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.